Welcome back to Skytech-Lens. In 2025, the stable trade relationship between Canada and the United States collapsed almost overnight. The Trump administration's America First doctrine imposed steep tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and automobiles, disrupting decades of economic partnership. Canada retaliated with a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, prompting China to target Canadian canola with harsh tariffs of its own. This double blow left Canadian industry squeezed from both sides, with policymakers scrambling for solutions. The US pressured Canada to align against China, even as it hurt Canadian exports. China flexed its market power in response. For Canadians, these global disputes hit home. Jobs in factories, mills, and farms were suddenly at risk. The old system of free trade was being replaced by economic nationalism and tit-for-tat tariffs. Countries were no longer just competing, they were actively undermining each other. For a trade-dependent nation like Canada, this new reality was dangerous and isolating. The disputes with the US and China weren't separate, they were two fronts in the same economic war. Canada faced the threat of long-term isolation and economic damage unless it found a new path. US tariffs quickly escalated from steel and aluminum to a 25% tariff on Canadian-built automobiles, threatening the heart of Canada's manufacturing sector. The integrated auto supply chain, where half of a Canadian car's parts come from the US, was thrown into chaos. Nearly 500,000 Canadian jobs were suddenly at risk. Washington's rhetoric was blunt: America first, Canada second. Additional tariffs on a wide range of Canadian goods followed, tightening the economic vice. Canadian factories faced soaring costs and logistical nightmares, making their products less competitive. Uncertainty led to cancelled investments and hiring freezes. The promise of partnership was replaced by a sense of betrayal and anxiety. Canada's over-reliance on the US was exposed as a critical vulnerability. The economic model that had served Canada for generations was no longer sustainable. Leaders realized they needed a new strategy to protect Canada from the unpredictable whims of its largest trading partner. The American squeeze forced Canada to rethink its future. It was time to look beyond the old playbook. As US pressure mounted, a surprising diplomatic opening emerged from China. Relations had been tense, especially after Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese EVs and China's retaliatory canola tariffs. At the APEC summit, Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Xi Jinping held a pivotal meeting. China offered to lift its canola tariffs if Canada dropped its EV tariff, a straightforward swap. For Canadian farmers, this was a lifeline. For Ottawa, a strategic dilemma. Accepting the deal meant breaking ranks with the US, risking Washington's ire. But the benefits were immediate relief for farmers and a chance to diversify trade. The proposal forced Canada to choose between loyalty to a traditional ally and pragmatic self-interest. It was more than a trade deal, it was a test of sovereignty. The decision would shape Canada's economic future. Would Canada remain a passive pawn or assert its own interests? The hand extended from the east was about more than canola and cars. It was about Canada's place in a changing world. Prime Minister Carney faced a defining choice: stick with the US and endure economic pain, or accept China's offer and risk American retaliation. Carney stunned the world by lifting the tariff on Chinese EVs in exchange for China reopening its market to Canadian agriculture. He framed the move as economic self-preservation, not betrayal. The decision signaled that Canada would chart its own course, prioritizing its people over old alliances. The risk of further US tariffs was real, but the cost of inaction was greater. By making a deal with China, Canada solved an immediate crisis and declared its intent to be more independent on the global stage. Diversification became the new mantra. Over-reliance on the US was now seen as a liability. This was the first step in a broader strategy to reduce dependency and build new relationships, especially in Asia. The deal was about more than canola and EVs. It was about reorienting Canada's place in the world. Carney's gamble was bold, but necessary. The message was clear: Canada's trade policy would be made in Ottawa, not dictated by Washington. The era of quiet dependency was ending. Canada was ready to take control of its economic destiny. The world was watching to see if the gamble would pay off. The stakes had never been higher. The immediate impact of Carney's decision was felt on the prairies. Canola farmers, once on the brink, saw prices rebound as China reopened its market. Relief and hope returned to rural communities. For families, the removal of the EV tariff meant affordable electric cars were finally within reach. The deal aligned economic relief with environmental goals, accelerating the shift to cleaner technology. But the US response was swift and hostile, accusing Canada of undermining Western unity. Canadian businesses, especially in the auto sector, braced for more uncertainty. The gamble created new opportunities but also new risks. Canada now had to balance diversification with the reality that the US market remained vital. Managing fallout with Washington while building new partnerships became a high-wire act. The deal with China solved one problem but created another. Canada was navigating a treacherous new landscape, where every decision had global consequences. The crisis sparked a new doctrine in Ottawa's sectoral resilience. Instead of relying on one massive trading partner, Canada would build a web of smaller, focused agreements worldwide. The goal spread risk so a dispute with one partner wouldn't cripple the whole economy. Key industries, agriculture, energy, tech, would seek multiple international partners. The China deal became a model targeted, pragmatic, and immediately beneficial. Diplomats and industry leaders were tasked with finding new opportunities beyond the US. The age of strategic diversification had begun. Guided by sectoral resilience, Canada pivoted toward Asia. The government aimed to double non-US exports, focusing on fast-growing Asia-Pacific economies. Trade missions and new agreements with ASEAN countries accelerated. Canadian firms in green tech and critical minerals found eager Asian partners. Exports to Asia climbed, not just in commodities but in high-value goods and services. Educational and cultural exchanges deepened ties, laying the groundwork for lasting partnerships. The Asian pivot was more than trade. It was a comprehensive reorientation. Canada wasn't alone in feeling the sting of US trade policy. Japan and South Korea, facing similar tariffs and ultimatums, began seeking alternatives. Japanese and Korean firms, wary of US instability, turned to Canada for investment and supply chains. Canada positioned itself as a stable, welcoming partner, offering access to North America without the political drama. As the US built walls, Canada built bridges, attracting talent and capital. America's attempt to put itself first inadvertently strengthened Canada's global position. The world's discontent with Washington became Canada's opportunity. The turmoil of 2025 taught Canada a hard lesson. Dependency is a liability. The pivot to China and the embrace of sectoral resilience marked a new era of self-reliance. Canada's future would be built on diverse, flexible partnerships, not allegiance to a single bloc. The goal: a robust, shock-resistant economy able to thrive amid global uncertainty. The crisis forged a stronger, more independent Canada. By charting its own course, Canada laid the foundation for a secure, prosperous future. The nation emerged not as a satellite, but as a confident player on the world stage. Thanks for watching. Subscribe the channel for more updates.